Joe Bourdow is a partner with Premier Franchise Advisors and has a 45-year business career that includes significant experience as a successful franchisee and franchisor. In his illustrious career, Joe was president of Valpak Direct Marketing Systems and is on several advisory boards. Joe Bourdow, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Everything seems to be working properly.
Yeah, it's what's it like in Florida today? Is it sunny and lots of COVID racing around?
Yeah, we are in the middle of the summer. Of course, some said that sunshine and humidity and warm weather would take care of the problem, and I can tell you it has not. We are, unfortunately, the numbers are going the wrong way here as we do this, and we're headed into the 4th of July holiday weekend. There's some concern. Our beaches are open, and whereas beaches down in the Miami, Broward County area, South Florida, are closed. So we'll just have to see how this all turns out. But it's not a great situation here right now.
Let's go back in time prior to COVID, which was only about 3 months ago. What were the trends then in franchise?
Well, it could not have been heated up or hotter, heated up more or hotter. It was interesting. Since I retired from Valpak now 10 years ago, I've been active in franchise advisory work. So I have several clients in the franchisor space here in the States, as well as suppliers. So I'm still pretty tuned in. 3 of my clients prior to this happening were involved they were growing like wildly, and were successful companies, and they were in the process of actually negotiating minority recaps to sell part of their companies to take some money off the table. And all but one of those stopped suddenly. And whereas most of my work was long-term strategic planning, that kind of thing, overnight, suddenly it was crisis communications. It was trying to figure out how to downsize, how to react to a problem that we didn't know how long it would go, and also to navigate through some federal government programs which came down right at that same point. So our world completely changed, and here in the States, the last 2 weeks in March were much different than the first 2 weeks, and then April was terrible, and May came back to a greater or lesser extent for companies in the space, but very few are back to their revenue levels of last year for sure for the same months.
They say COVID will be around until a vaccine or a cure is found, which is the vaccine. That could be a year, 2 years, 3 years. What changes do you see, not just for the franchising or the franchise industry, but for just general business?
Well, that's a very difficult question. And, you think about it every day, and I don't think anybody really has the answer. Short term, companies have had to adapt and pivot. And if you're a franchisor, you not only have to figure out how the business model may need to change, but you also have to deal with very concerned franchisees throughout your system. And so all of the things that are important in being a good franchisor become much more important, more magnified when you're in a crisis kind of situation. Some of my companies have had to drastically pivot. A great example is a company here just in the States, Huntington Learning Centers, which is a 40-year-old after-school tutoring business. They actually invented, I think, the concept of after-school tutoring, and suddenly the majority of their centers were closed, and they had no online tool or no ability to do business. They were able to pivot very quickly and put together a pretty good program in order to keep things going. Other companies just simply had to see a sudden decline in revenue and how to deal with that. But their existing business model continues. Of course, you have the restaurants and the bars that are hit hard. as well. So it's I don't know that people have yet really been able to grasp the long-term business impact of what this is going to be. If you follow politics in the United States, which are kind of crazy at the moment, you realize that you have some of the states stayed locked down longer than others, and some were in a hurry to reopen, including here in Florida. And these are now the states that are seeing the return of the bad numbers and the growth in the cases. And we don't think this is really even the second wave. This is just a continuation of the first wave. So you're hearing now the first concerns that we may be really in for a very rough road, here in at least a good portion of the United States for some months to come. And so now it's more of a matter of how to continue to do business for a longer period of time.
I see the Subway being one of those great companies that are just all over the world. I mean, they're still open, but man, oh man, I just don't know how they can make it work for them, because people are scared to go out. People are scared of dealing with people handling food.
Well, it's funny. One of my great memories was the time I got to spend with Fred DeLuca, the founder. I was just thinking of this the other night. And back during the economic crisis in 2008 and 9, we happened to be together at an International Franchise Association event, and just talking, he and I, after the event had taken place, and it kind of went late into the evening, and he was very frustrated at that time because they had come up with this idea for the $5 footlong, and he was having trouble getting his franchisees, to buy into it. And I was having trouble getting my franchisees to buy into something that I was trying to do to fight the economic crisis back then. And I just thought, well, I've just talked to the guy who's got, more restaurants pretty much than anybody else in the world. He's got the same problems I have, so I guess I can get through mine. Well, what happened this week? Now we're starting to see ads for, here in the States at least, for $5 footlong is back, but now you have to buy two.
That's naughty. But you get two for the price of one.
That's right. That's a lot. That's 2 feet of great submarine sandwich. But Mr. Luca passed on, unfortunately, a few years ago. But he would be really interested to see what's happening today.
Also, just as a sidebar here, Your Honor, you're in broadcast and you have some online radio stations, and you follow. You look with Shine. I think it's Shine Baseball. Tell us about, just briefly, your broadcast interest, because that is, from way back, that's one of your true passions.
Well, the funny part of this is you kind of played a role in that back in the day. We were thinking it was 10 years ago. We were both at the International Franchise Association convention. I was running Valpak, and I got the idea that we could do interviews from our booth on the convention floor, but I didn't know how to do it. And somehow or another, you and I met, and you knew how to do it. And so we did it, and we did 7 hours of interviews from the convention. And, I was kind of watching you do it. I realized, there was a lot I needed to learn about digital media. And I did. So I retired, and I just thought, gee, now you can have a radio station without an AM/FM transmitter. And in our St. Petersburg, Florida, needed a local radio station that was really local. So that's what we did. Started in 2013, and now now we're taking a step back into time, and we're going to also be on FM radio here in the next few days in St. Pete. And but it's a podcast platform. We have global listeners. It's not huge, but we have about 25,000 people that listen to it on a regular basis. About 80% of them, here in Florida. So.
And it's amazing the landscape, how it's changing. Joe Rogan, who has a podcast, and $100 million for 3 years from Spotify isn't bad money, to say the least.
Yeah, well, we haven't been focused on the monetization of this as yet.
Yet.
But we will be a nonprofit, what we call a 501c3 here, so we will be acting like a public radio station when we go on the FM. But also got to do. I've been originating a football broadcast that goes out across the country on Sirius XM here and on about 150 stations that's played every year. And we've done that for 9 years now, too. So a lot happened, all a result of sitting down with you and Las Vegas, Nevada, or wherever that was back in the day.
It was in Florida, in
Orlando?
Yeah. Orlando,
Okay.
That's it, Orlando in Florida. But I saw no alligators, but I did see some margaritas.
That's right. There were quite a few, as I recall.
They're vicious. They're vicious creatures. Joe, just quickly, the next 6 months we will be in COVID. How do you see the whole business sector, including franchising, moving along?
Well, I think people are going to have to individually, in their own way, grasp this and deal with it. And the companies I'm working directly with all have a slightly different approach, slightly different need and strategy. And but I think it's important that when we got into this in the middle part of March, we were all focused on a 60-day plan. If some were 45 days, 60 days, we were just thinking, okay, if we can just do what we need to do here in, April and May, by the time mid-June or the 4th of July comes around, everything will be back to normal. And, well, here we are, and we're not back to normal. So, some of the companies are going to have to adapt their strategies further. Some are just going to muscle through because they are somewhere close within striking distance of last year's numbers, maybe only down to 10 or 20%. Others are going to have to deal with more radical challenges. But I'm sure I will be worrying through that with at least my customers. So,
and maybe a glass of red on the side just to alleviate the stress, and it's good for your heart too.
That's right. That's what I've heard. So,
Joe, really appreciate it. Joe Bourdow, thank you very much.
Great to see you again.